Hi folks, this is your MWIS Planning Outlook with our latest longer range thoughts. Some rather unsettled conditions, high rainfall totals for some, big contrasts of temperatures, and we'll bring back the freezing level chart in this video. Here's Tuesday's situation first of all. We've got the remnants of a previous area of low pressure out over Scandinavia, and still the debris of some various fronts producing areas of showers, but not as frequent and as heavy as we saw during Monday. Still a windy day across the mountains, the strongest speeds in the morning still gale force, but will tend to ease down with time through the day. Best chance for some drier and brighter conditions will be across the eastern parts of the Highlands, with some sunshine and cloud breaks towards higher tops. Our next weather system approaching from the Atlantic will start to thicken up the high cloud across Wales, encroaching further north and east later in the day, and some rain and strong winds again moving in with that system. Some spits and spots of rain already approaching southwest Wales by the end of Tuesday afternoon ahead of that system. Rain spilling in across Ireland will extend further into Wales and then gradually more into northern England and southwest Scotland onwards into Tuesday evening and night. Some persistent heavy totals of rain across the Welsh mountains. This is going forwards in 3-hour time steps, but continuous most of the night into the early hours of Wednesday. Totals across Wales could well exceed 50 millimetres over higher ground facing west and southwest. So some streams will be fast flowing and the risk of some flooding into Wednesday morning. Rain will be fairly persistent across northern England and extending north and east across Scotland as well. Some uncertainty on how much rain does extend north through the Highlands. It could be that that frontal zone breaks up a little bit more than shown on this particular model chart, but some rain and low cloud looking pretty extensive across a good part of the Highlands. The wind will really depend on exactly where that low is centred. Looks as though we have gale force speeds across England and Wales, and the risk of speed strengthening to gale force for the Highlands as well, but this is less certain. Zooming out to look at the bigger picture on this model chart over the Atlantic, and we've got an area of low pressure just centred west of Scotland during Wednesday. The rain across England and Wales will tend to ease for a time and become drizzly and patchy, but low cloud still covering the hills. We've got a long extended conveyor belt of a frontal system back into the Atlantic, and it's this wave feature that will be around for a few days forwards. Quite a contrast of temperature then between some warm and humid south-southwesterlies on the southern side of that zone and some cooler North Atlantic air on the northern side of that, and that's fueling this continuous boundary zone and the scope for some further rainfall. And the risk of heavy rain once more is focused on Wales onwards into Thursday. Southwesterly winds still looking strong, could well be gale force. A lot will depend exactly on the position of the low just north of Scotland at this point. For the Highlands, broadly showery in the west, drier further east, but a windy day for most or all places. Taking things further onwards then, Thursday night into Friday, and that continuous zone of rainfall across Wales just looks as though it pushes further northwards into northern England, southern Scotland as well. The risk of some persistent heavy rainfall associated with that through into Friday. Again, a lot of uncertainty on the exact positioning of this feature by this time. It's quite a shallow zone of low pressure, but again we have that big contrast of temperature between the warm humid air over more southern parts and the cooler air further north. So some persistent rain along that boundary is likely to continue, and we're still trying to develop a further weather system around the Bay of Biscay heading onwards into the weekend. So the same energy system is going to be responsible for our weather pattern again into the weekend. The scope once more for some high rainfall totals over Wales and into northern England, so risk of flooding in these places as rainfall amounts do continue to accumulate. Could well be in excess of 100 millimetres over a few days here. Some caution is needed as we go toward the weekend, with a lot of complexity in the forecast. The computer models will all vary in how they handle things for a day or so yet. But looking at the freezing level chart from this model, and it's backed up by others as well, this is over the weekend, we do have the scope to drop to freezing point or below across the Scottish mountains. Now this process may take longer. This is shown for Saturday, but it may be further into Sunday before this takes place. But this is showing a freezing level dropping down to around 1,000 metres heading onwards into Sunday. It may not quite go that low, but it does give us the scope for getting the higher tops in Scotland at least to drop to freezing point. And if we do see some precipitation still in the mix, then we have even the prospect for some snow on the very highest tops. Low pressure is still around. We're drawing in the airflow then, unsurprisingly, from a colder northeasterly direction at that time. We've got high pressure, though, trying to build from the Atlantic, and the pattern is becoming quite complicated still by this time, with the high just expanding in gradually, trying to settle things down. But just look at all the activity over Europe, and that's still an unsettled weather regime here. And what tries to happen next week on some of the simulations is that just pivots back and develops a further area of low pressure over England and Wales, and we have an east or northeasterly wind prevailing across northern Britain. So uncertain with that. It could be that high pressure to the north just gives some drier conditions, especially for Scotland, and better toward the western side of Scotland in particular. But further south, we do have the prospect still for some wet weather, and it could be even that circulation expands even further northward. So there's a tantalising glimpse of high pressure on the chart, but if this one is to be believed, it still could be a rather pessimistic, unsettled forecast heading through into the middle of next week. That is not especially certain, though, for now. If you look at model details for the week as a whole, for the 7 days to the 29th, there is that signal of higher than average pressure just up toward the north, so that is in there and giving us that scope for some optimism, but I don't think that is especially long-lived, if anything. So more likely we stay in a more changeable, mixed outlook as we go to the very end of the month. The pressure patterns here would suggest average conditions, which at this time of year, average is fairly mixed and changeable. So I think that's where we go still around the change of the month. Maybe not quite as deeply unsettled as we're seeing right now, but still a bit of a mixture. And the blue colours here in early October still nearby indicate that lower than average pressure is near to us over the North Atlantic. So I think the continuing theme of being on the more unsettled side more of the time is to be expected still in the next few weeks. Make of that what you will. I hope you get something useful out of that for planning the next week or so. If you need your local details, as always, it's on our website, updated every day. That is your Planning Outlook. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.